Restoring Men and History. For the first time in 1400 years, Christians are a minority in England and Wales, and the U.S. is not far behind. Robert Spencer, PJ Media, wrote this article. We're going to read and comment on it. So he says, for the first time in 14 years, think about that. First time in 1400 years. The UK's Telegraph reported Tuesday that, quote, Christians now account for less than half of England and Wales' population for the first time in census history, government figures reveal. And read the headlines and think about what's been going on in England over the last few years. And this decline, as you can see, England's position has gone down in the world and declined. And right, these European nations, as they've lost Christianity, have obviously declined. So there's certainly some kind of correlation there, right? Think about England over the decades, and we could probably look back through all the polls, but anyway, we're doing this right now. Has it been good for their people? Has it been good for their country to see this decline? That's the question, right, that you want to ask yourself. He goes on, now back to his article. This is an indication of what happens, and watch, when the left attains what? Cultural dominance in a society. And is likely a harbinger of come to which country? The United States. I'm sure you're concerned with that. Unless there's some, he's saying, massive cultural shift. And what could that be? Could be. You can look at the culture and see the direction and see the crazy going on right now. You've got people that actually believe they can become cat in high school. And you've got people that believe they can be other things that is impossible. Impossible. So if you look at the culture, and look who's pushing it too, and look how many people are pushing. What's the goal there? What's the agenda? Why are they pushing it? Right now, however, the trends are unmistakable. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, says, the Telegraph, results show that 46.2% of the population, that's 27.5 million, described themselves as Christian in 2021. Now, this is a big mark. That marks a 13.1% decrease from 59.3%, 33.3 million people in 2011. The trend is the same in the United States, although the numbers are higher, he says. Think about that, higher. According to the Pew Research Center, 65% of Americans identified themselves as Christian, down 10% from 2009. Think about that, 10% in 12 years, a 10% decline in 12 years. Gentlemen, that is not good. And by the way, because you identify as Christian does not mean you have a Christian worldview. Those two things are different. Maybe perhaps we'll do a segment on that, but Christian worldview versus just saying, yes, I'm a Christian, and there are all kinds of questions that would go into that. So that's really concerning and scary, right? The number of those who said they were nothing in particular, nothing, grew by 4% to 16% of the total population. Now, if you're nothing in particular, where do you get your authority from to back up your ideals? If your authority comes from God and the Word of God, that's pretty strong, right? But if it's just nothing in particular, you in England and Wales, this was not just a matter of religiosity declining across the board. Now, this is interesting. The census data also shows that every major religion increased over the 10-year period except for Christianity. So that's interesting. However, if you look at the culture, it's not doing so well in England. It's not doing so well in America, right? Seems like we're in decline. So that's interesting and fascinating. So what's causing that? Why did in those countries every major religion increase except Christianity? What's the issue? Now, he goes on to say the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, tried to put a good face on this fiasco, saying that the new figures were not a great surprise, but insisted that Christianity still remained, quote, the largest movement on earth. Spencer goes on to say, that's great, but what happened in England? Well, right, I just said that. What happened in England and Wales? What's happening in the United States? The decline is a result of a number of factors, and this is interesting. Journalist Daniel Greenfield observed that, quote, what you're seeing is the cultural programming that has all but eliminated Judeo-Christian religiosity and a source of values and identity among the young and replaced it with pop culture and politics. Now, we just saw that in an election with the young, right? Think about that. Where do you see religious values? Or where do you just see even virtue talked about? We've talked about that, so we're not going to go back through it. But how many people even mention virtue? Morality, not climate change, but other. We know the stories. We know the schools. We know where Hollywood stands. The culture. And if culture leads politics, and all that is constantly going out and into someone, what would counter that? A father reading the Bible every single night with his children, right? What are fathers doing to counter that culture? Are they restricting phone use, social media use, and giving them the word? So this is articles about Christianity, so we're focused on that solution. So would that be fathers reading the word every night to their children? Picking out the programming, watching it very carefully, guarding what goes in. It goes on, that's certainly true. The elimination of Judeo-Christian religiosity, however, has not been solely a matter of cultural programming by exterior forces, and this is so true coming up. Here comes the big point. The very people who were supposed to be the guardians, now this is so true, of Judeo-Christian religiosity, are in many cases, he goes on to say, the problem, the issue. They're the ones responsible for the decline. And we know that's true, right? They've watered down the message. They've tried to be all things to all people, or they've just completely embraced it. You go in and you see the world in the church, not just, and the church becomes of the world, not just being in the world. Instead of being a positive influence, the world has corrupted the church, right? What do they stand for? What is the church standing for? What is the church giving you as a person? The church doesn't give you anything, you're not going to go back. It's just the same. This is a result of the fact that the left's long march through the institutions didn't just take over and destroy our colleges and universities, as well as the entertainment industry and the established media. The churches and other religious institutions, the churches and other religious right were targeted as well, he goes on to say. True, the cultural Marxists had a plan, they executed it, and they accomplished it pretty much. They've destroyed. The targeting, okay, he says that was yes, it was successful. Virtually all the old mainline Protestant denominations have become summed up, and this is a great quip right here, and this is great, the Democratic Party of Prayer. So he's basically calling all the churches, and you can call it the leftist at prayer or the cultural Marxist at prayer, because all the cultural Marxists wanted to put in, some of them have come into the church, right? So all of that intersectionality, all of that movement. And he goes on to say, and I've seen this, go to the average Episcopalian, United Methodist, Presbyterian church, and you're liable to see an LGBT rainbow flag. And if even you don't see one, the sermon, he says, will be about climate change or systematic racism or Trump, insurrectionists, transphobes. So that is true. I went to a Christmas Eve service last year and was shocked, because Christmas Eve you would think would be about Christ. And what was the opening message, which went on, seemed to go on forever. I was shocked, as well as people wearing masks everywhere. But shocked that, and this was just last year, the whole first part of the message was not about Christ. It was not about the truth. It was about racism. All about racism, racism, racism. So if you're going to go to the church, you can get that on the TV, right? You can get that anywhere else. We hear that constantly. You don't need to go to church for that and drive over there, especially on Christmas Eve, when it should be about the Christ. So he goes on, the distinctive aspects of Christianity that make it what it is and what has been for 2,000 years may or may not be paid lip service, while the commitment to diversity and inclusion will be front and center. The situation is hardly any different in too many Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches today, as well as the Reformed Jewish congregations. All too many reflect the spirit of the age. That's true. You see it because I've walked in and out of several churches that were just not much to the message, rather than the Spirit of God. And he goes on to say, people don't need to go to a synagogue or church to hear about the spirit of the age, right? And he says it, right? It's everywhere anyway, so you don't need to do that. So that's true. Why would you go to church when you can just watch TV and get that message? Or you can, Hollywood will give you that all day long. More of the same. Everywhere in your face. Even in sports, you can't watch ESPN without it. So anyway, they push that message. So you're not going to attract people or men that are looking for something truthful or different or strong or the Christ through just being the world. So the church needs, what's the line? The church needs to be in the world, not of it, right? Be in the world, not of it. It isn't, he goes on to say, that congregants are turning away from the churches because they're more conservative than the pastors and preachers. They're turning away because the churches and other religious institutions aren't offering them anything. Well, there you go. From what they get anywhere else. So why bother, right? If it's not new, why are you going to take the time to get dressed, drive over there, and do all that? Leftism has conquered the religious establishment in the United Kingdom as well as the United States. But since it's conquered everything else as well, it's the same to stay home, he's saying on Sunday morning, enjoy a waffle. Right. He says, in fact, he sums it up with, the churches in short have failed their people. And that's why people are leaving. They will continue to leave as long as that keeps up. So, right, if you people want to go to something where somebody believes in something, right, you want to be a part of something that believes in at least themselves and what they're teaching. If they don't believe it, why would you go? And I read another article that people are attracted to the non-denominational strong churches still. So you want to stand for something because it's right, but it's also the way to attract members. The truth resonates, right? You're going to know the truth, and especially if you're looking for that. So the solution is going back to the truth and having the courage to state the truth, right? They don't want to go in there to be further indoctrinated or further just hear the same. So speak the truth. If they're depressed or they're having issues and the world can't fix their problems, why are they going to go over here to have their problems fixed? Truth's going to fix their problems, right? And calling it out. Their flaws, their imperfections, missing the mark. If they're missing the mark, they need this, right? And so if it's not giving you much, you'd probably be better to stay home and read the Bible by yourself, by far, right? Better to stay home and read the Bible than go get bad teaching, for sure. Hebrews 4:12 says, for the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, even penetrating as far as the division of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So if you take the word out of the church, you're going to take away the power, right? So if you water it down, try to be all to all people, and don't give you the real truth, people aren't going to be attracted to that. So the church should be in the world, but not of the world. Now, whether you're a Christian or you don't believe or you do believe, you have to look at society and say, as Christianity has declined, has America become better in many ways? Has the civility become better? Has love become better? Has peace become better? England and Wales look at the same thing. Or did we get into crazy people that think they can be cats? People that think they can be something they aren't, that fight the natural order. So that's what to think about. And the founding fathers spoke to this. We're not going to go through it. We can one day. But George Washington, his farewell address, in his farewell address, he said, it won't work without religion. It won't work without virtue. A lot of the founding fathers, Patrick Henry, said it won't work without virtue, morality, religion. That the United States, the Republic, won't work. That the Constitution won't work. So there's various founders. I have all those quotes. But we won't do that today. We'll come back to that perhaps another day. But the founder said, look, the United States is not going to work. The Republic won't work if you underneath it, you don't have the virtues, the morals, and the religion. So that's why it's still important. And think about it. When people needed fellowship and they needed each other, a lot of the churches shut down too. So you can't give lightweight messages and shut down and close the doors when people really need you. So if you want men to go back to the church, you got to give the truth. You've got to be intellectual, not emotional, and give the word and state the truth with courage, because men are going to be attracted to that boldness, not just a mix of the same. So there is a strong role for the church to play in the lives of people in America. Let me be clear on this now, not a national church. National church is what? Unconstitutional because of the First Amendment. We always want the Constitution. So not a national church, but there's a place in the lives of people and in the community to balance what? The materialism, because what did Tocqueville say? And we did a whole message on this, so you can go get it. We won't go back through it, but looking up and over to God gets you out of self and materialism. And there's a lot of self and materialism in America right now. So again, that's the balance. Right now, there's no balance, a little balance. You need the balance of spiritualism and materialism. Tocqueville talked about it when he walked across. We've talked about that. So, in conclusion, many men will not go back to foolishness. If the churches want to be relevant, they have to offer the truth and what the world is not offering. Stand stronger and for the truth, forging better, stronger men for better lives. Thank you. If you think it's important to build better, stronger men, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel right now.